My name is Karen. I'm 32 years old and I live in a quiet town just outside of Paris. For most of my life, I believed in the kind of love that makes everything feel whole, the kind that ends in a forever promise. My engagement day was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of that dream. Instead, it shattered everything I thought I knew. I discovered that Lukas, the man I was ready to spend my life with, had been unfaithful. But the betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. He wasn't just cheating with anyone. He was sleeping with my younger sister, Elise. What made it even more devastating was that my family chose to stand by her. They said things like, "You were always too serious, Karen," or "Maybe he found something in Elise that you lacked." It wasn't just a betrayal of love, it was a betrayal of blood. That moment forced me to make a decision that would change the course of my entire life. I had to walk away from everything I once held dear, from Lukas, from Elise, even from the people I called family. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Let me tell you the full story of betrayal, of secrets cloaked in smiles, of the moment I lost everything and how I slowly found myself again. Everything began on a summer evening, the kind of evening that feels like a promise. Lanterns sparkled across the garden of my family home, their golden glow casting soft shadows over white tablecloths, champagne flutes, and carefully arranged bouquets. It was the night of our engagement party, mine and Lukas's, and the air smelled of roses and ripe berries, mixed with laughter, music, and the warm hush of dusk. Lukas and I had been together for nearly 6 years. He was an architect, brilliant, admired, and impossibly charming. There was something in his smile that always made me feel like the only woman in the world. I used to believe we were building something lasting, something sacred, not just a house or a life, but a future together. That night, after his tender, heartfelt speech that left everyone teary-eyed, I slipped quietly inside to fix my makeup. My heart was light, almost childlike with happiness. But when I returned, I noticed something strange. Neither Lukas nor Elise were in sight. Elise, my younger sister by 3 years, had been fluttering around all night in a pale blue dress, hugging everyone, her laughter as familiar as my own breath. They had both vanished without a word. A flicker of unease began to spread in my chest, the kind that doesn't come from reason but from instinct. Something didn't feel right. I scanned the garden, trying to stay composed. Clara, one of my closest friends, approached with a glass of wine in hand and a casual smile. "I think I saw them walking toward the oak tree," she said, gesturing toward the far edge of the garden. "You know, the one your dad used to hang the swing from?" Her tone was light, but the words landed with weight. I walked in that direction, my heels sinking into the soft grass. The sounds of celebration, clinking glasses, music, laughter slowly faded behind me. Ahead, shadows thickened under the old oak, whose broad limbs had held my childhood swing. The tree that once symbolized safety now loomed like a silent witness to something I wasn't meant to see. And then there they were. Elise. Lukas. She was wrapped around him, her arms looped around his neck like ivy, and they were kissing, not a polite, guilty kiss, but one deep and consuming, filled with hunger. It was the kind of kiss people reserve for the privacy of dark rooms and locked doors. And in that moment, it felt as if the world had cracked open beneath my feet. I froze. My feet wouldn't move, my voice caught in my throat. I stood there, invisible, watching the man I loved and the sister I had shared my life with betray me in the most intimate, shameless way. It was like watching a scene from a psychological thriller, except I was the one who didn't know the ending because I'd never imagined this plot. Pain came in waves. My body went cold, then hot, then numb. I backed away slowly, one step, then another, until the lantern light reappeared in the distance. My breath caught, and I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. I couldn't stay. I didn't want them to see me. I didn't want anyone to see me, not in that dress, not with that shattered expression. I turned and ran. Not back toward the guests, but through the gate behind the house. My engagement gown, a delicate ivory thing with lace sleeves and tiny beads, dragged in the grass like something dead. I ran until I reached my car, hands trembling as I shoved the keys into the ignition. I drove aimlessly at first, through quiet back roads, my vision blurred with tears, mascara running down my cheeks like ink. Eventually, I stopped at a small roadside hotel a few miles away. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions, where the neon sign blinked cold and distant, reminding me that I was alone. The receptionist barely looked up as I checked in. Within minutes, I was locked inside a dim room that smelled faintly of detergent and old carpets. I collapsed onto the bed. And there, in that ugly little room, I broke. All the dreams of a wedding, of a home together, of Sunday mornings with coffee and shared newspapers, they scattered like ash. I cried until my chest hurt, until my ribs felt bruised from grief. My phone vibrated again and again on the nightstand, lighting up with messages. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to hear their voices in my head. But I needed something. I needed someone. So I called Clara. When she answered, I could barely speak. "Clara," I whispered, voice hoarse and cracked. "I saw them. Lukas and Elise. They were kissing." There was silence on the line, then a sharp gasp. "What? Karen, what the actual hell? Are you serious?" Her voice rose, filled with outrage, a fury that felt like a warm hand reaching across the dark to hold mine. "I left," I said. "I couldn't breathe. I'm at some hotel. I don't know. I couldn't go home." Clara was quiet for a moment, then said firmly, "Karen, you need to read the messages. You need to know what they're saying. You deserve the truth, no matter how disgusting it is." My fingers trembled as I opened Lukas's message. "Karen, I'm sorry you had to see it like that. I never meant to hurt you. Elise and I, we've been in love for a long time. I proposed to you because I thought I could move on from her. But I couldn't. I'm sorry. You were a comfort, a way to forget. But it wasn't real. Not for me. A comfort, a way to forget. Not real. 6 years. Shared birthdays. Quiet nights and whispered plans. All of it dismissed with the cold finality of not real. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. Then I opened Elise's message. "Karen, I know you're angry, but you have to understand. Lukas and I, it's fate. We couldn't fight it. We tried. We really did. But some loves are meant to be. I hope someday you'll forgive us. Not a single apology. Just a romanticized justification, as if betrayal were poetry." Elise had always been like that, dressing her selfishness up in pastel colors and pretty words. Suddenly, I remembered something. I was 17. Our grandmother had given me her pearl necklace, an heirloom, delicate and priceless. Elise, only 14, begged to borrow it. I said no. It was the only thing that felt truly mine. But my mother intervened. "Karen, don't be selfish. She's your sister. Let her wear it." I relented. Elise lost it the same night. When I cried, my parents consoled her. "She didn't mean to. It was an accident. She's young." I was told to let it go. My feelings had always come second. Elise was the golden child, beautiful, bright, charming. I was the reliable one, the steady one, the one who could be counted on to compromise. And now I saw how deep the pattern ran. This wasn't just about Lukas. It was about a lifetime of being told to step aside. I stayed at that small hotel for 3 days. Time blurred. Curtains stayed closed, the lights dim. I barely ate. I barely moved. I existed in a fog, not quite awake, not quite asleep, just numb. Pain was too big to hold all at once, so my body seemed to freeze to protect itself. Clara came the next morning. She brought clean clothes, warm soup, and no questions. She didn't push me to talk. She simply sat beside me, silent, her presence anchoring me when I felt like I might drift away completely. And when I finally started speaking, voice hoarse, sentences broken, she listened without interrupting. She let me tell the same details over and over, allowed the rage and grief to tumble out raw. In her silence, I found a small pocket of safety. I ignored the dozens of missed calls from my parents. Every time the screen lit up with Mom or Dad, my stomach twisted. What could they possibly say? And worse, what if they had already known? On the third morning, I woke with a dull ache in my chest and a quiet certainty in my mind. I had to go back, not to forgive, not to reconcile, but to gather what was mine. I needed to reclaim whatever was left of me from that house before I could move on. When I stepped inside my childhood home, I expected discomfort. What I didn't expect was that scene. There they were, Lukas, Elise, my parents, all sitting in the living room, drinking coffee like it was any other Sunday. Lukas sat beside Elise, their fingers intertwined like some practiced couple. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. And then, right in front of everyone, she gave him a soft kiss. Kiss. In my home, my mother was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, not in grief but in joy. Her smile trembled with emotion. "Isn't it wonderful?" she whispered. "They're soulmates. Some things are just meant to be." I stood frozen in the doorway, breath caught in my chest. The room blurred for a moment. "Wonderful," I repeated, voice cracking. "Are you serious?" 30 minutes before that kiss, I was the bride-to-be. I was engaged to him. We were planning a life. My voice rose. I didn't care anymore about sounding calm or composed. But my father responded with a cold, measured tone. "Karen, enough. Don't be childish. Your sister has found happiness. Try to be happy for her." That's when Elise looked up at me, not ashamed, not apologetic, but smug. "You're just jealous," she said calmly. "Because he chose me. Maybe you should stop trying to ruin our happiness." Something in me broke in that moment. But it wasn't the kind of break that leaves you shattered and sobbing. It was clean, sharp, final. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg for understanding. Instead, I turned silently and walked upstairs to my old bedroom. I packed everything that still felt like mine, my clothes, my books, my journals, the framed photos that didn't include them. I didn't touch anything that reminded me of this twisted version of family. When I finished, I dragged my suitcase down the stairs. They were still sitting there, laughing about something now. Lukas looked up as I passed. Elise didn't even flinch. I stopped at the door, hand on the knob, and turned once. "Enjoy your happiness," I said, voice even. "You all deserve each other." And then I walked out. I closed the door behind me, not gently, not ceremoniously, but with a slam that echoed through the hallways of the life I was leaving behind. I cut all ties with them, blocked their numbers, erased their messages, and deleted their names from my contacts. For the first time in my life, I chose me. I moved to Paris, rented a modest apartment in the 11th arrondissement, and threw myself into work like it was a lifeline. As an interior designer, I had always been good. But now I was determined to be exceptional. I took on every challenging project that came my way. I stayed up late sketching plans, met clients on weekends, and taught myself new design software just to stay ahead. My hands were constantly busy, and in that busyness, I found healing. Over the next 3 years, my hard work began to pay off. I was promoted and then promoted again until I became the creative director of one of the most respected firms in the city. I bought my own apartment, a bright, modern space in the heart of Paris, and designed every inch of it myself. Each corner reflected a piece of me: bold lines, warm tones, soft lighting. It was a sanctuary, a home, mine. Along the way, I allowed myself to rediscover joy. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since high school. I joined book clubs and met people who didn't know my past, who didn't care who Elise was. They saw me, not a victim, not someone's sister, just Karen. The pain of betrayal didn't vanish overnight. It faded slowly, like an old bruise. But it left behind a thin scar, a reminder of what I'd endured and the strength it took to move forward. And for the first time in years, I didn't just survive. I lived. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening, 5 years since I had walked away from that house and that family, when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Most days, I let unknown numbers go to voicemail. But something, a quiet unease, maybe instinct, made me pick up. Karen! The voice on the other end trembled. It's Mom. Please, you have to help us. Elise is in serious trouble. I felt the breath catch in my chest. That name, even after all this time, it still felt like a bruise when spoken aloud. Of course. Elise. My mother's voice cracked as she rushed through the story. After the grand wedding, which of course had been splashed across social media in all its excessive romantic glory, Elise and Lukas had used their wedding gifts and funds to launch a fashion design company. An ambitious dream. A beautiful facade. But dreams don't pay bills. The business had failed. Miserably. They were in debt, millions, my mother whispered, to banks and private investors. In a moment of panic, Lukas had turned to the worst kind of help, a criminal gang with a reputation for handling desperate financial problems. Now they owed 120,000 euros to dangerous people, and the threats were real, physical, imminent. They've already emptied our savings, my mother said, sobbing. Even the trust fund your grandmother left you, we used it to try to cover some of the debt. But it's not enough. They're coming for them, Karen. They'll be killed. Please. You have to help your sister. I stood in the middle of my apartment, bathed in the soft glow of the Paris skyline, my home as serene as a dream. A warm chamomile tea sat untouched on the coffee table. The silence in my space was sacred, the result of years of effort, pain, rebuilding. And now that silence was pierced by my mother's plea. I laughed. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Cold, bitter disbelief. No, I said, my voice like steel. They made their choices. I owe them nothing. My mother gasped. Karen, don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel, I interrupted. This isn't revenge. It's a boundary. And I won't set myself on fire to keep them warm. Then I ended the call. I blocked the number. I felt clear, like the world had finally stopped asking me to be the one who bent, who forgave, who paid the price for other people's mistakes. But the story didn't end there. An hour later, the intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone, and a strange tightness crept into my chest as I walked over to the monitor. Elise and Lukas. Their faces were pale, drawn, and panicked. Lukas had something in his hand, a crowbar or some kind of metal bar, and was jamming it against the outer door. Elise was screaming my name like a madwoman, hair tangled, makeup smeared, her voice shrill and desperate. Concierge tried to stop them, but somehow they forced their way past the lobby. The elevator, I realized, was already on its way up. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. Then banging. Fists against the wood. Karen! Open the door. You owe us. Elise's voice was raw with rage. I opened the door only a crack, my phone already recording. Leave, I said, voice calm. Cold. Lukas shoved the door with his shoulder. I fell back, my phone slipping from my hand. He stormed in, eyes wild. Elise followed, waving a piece of paper like a weapon. "You have to sign this," she shrieked. "It's a guarantee. You'll take over the debt. The gang said if someone signs for it, they'll back off." I stared at her. "You want me to go 120,000 euros into debt for you? You're my sister," she screamed. "You owe me." I almost laughed again. Almost. They were yelling, pacing, frantic. Lukas had smashed my phone on the floor. Elise was trying to shove the paper into my hands, hysterical. And then I saw it. My keys lying on the small table by the door. Attached to them was the emergency panic button built into the building's luxury security system. I'd never thought I'd need it. I had it installed for peace of mind, never expecting a real emergency. Without a word, I moved toward the table. Lukas caught on too late. I pressed the button, held it for 3 seconds. He lunged for me. His fingers grazed my shoulder, but I'd already stepped back. I turned to them slowly, breathing hard, and looked up at the small security camera in the corner of the ceiling. Pointed at it. "Smile," I said flatly. "You're on camera." Within minutes, I heard it, the sirens. The pounding on the door changed rhythm. 2 uniformed officers entered, fast and controlled, taking in the situation in seconds. Lukas tried to explain. Elise begged. "She's our sister. She's letting us die. She's a monster." But I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The officers placed Lukas in handcuffs, reading him his rights. Elise was sobbing now on the floor, mascara streaked down her face. "Karen, please, please help us. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I looked at her. The woman who had once been my sister. Who had kissed my fiancé beneath the tree where we used to swing. Who had watched me fall apart and walked away with the pieces. I felt nothing. No hate. No love. Just relief. "You made your choices," I said quietly. And I made mine. They were escorted out, Lukas snarling, Elise still begging, and I was left standing in the stillness of my home. The air smelled like jasmine and fear. The broken phone was in pieces near the couch. The emergency team offered to call someone for me to help me settle down. But I didn't need anyone. I sat on the floor for a moment, letting the quiet return. Letting the weight lift. A month later, my parents came to see me. I hadn't spoken to them since the day I left. There had been no calls, no emails, not even a birthday message. But now, suddenly, they stood outside my apartment door in Paris, their faces pale and drawn. Time had not been kind to them. My father's shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen before, and my mother clutched her coat too tightly, as if trying to hold herself together. When I opened the door, silence fell like a heavy curtain between us. My father's eyes welled with tears. His voice trembled. "We were wrong, Karen," he said. "Everyone turned their backs on us after what happened. We lost everything, our friends, our reputation. We failed you. I failed you." His tears were real, but I didn't feel comforted. I had waited years for this moment, some sign of remorse, some acknowledgement of what they had allowed to happen. But the timing said everything. They weren't here because they finally saw my pain. They were here because the family name had been dragged through the mud. Because Elise and Lukas had fallen and now they needed something, maybe redemption, maybe forgiveness, maybe just relief. I took a breath, calm but firm. "I forgive," I said, holding their gaze, "but not for your sake. I forgive because I need to let go. For me. That door," I nodded toward my chest, my past, all of it. "It's closed now. Permanently." Their eyes filled with fresh pain, but I didn't flinch. I didn't feel guilt. Only clarity. They walked away slower than they came, the echo of their steps fading like the last chapter of a book I no longer needed to read. 6 months later, I threw a small party at my apartment. It wasn't grand, just warm, filled with laughter and true friendship. Clara, my closest friend in Paris, brought wine and a stack of silly board games. Others brought flowers, fresh bread, homemade desserts. People who knew my story and stood by me not because they had to, but because they chose to. Clara raised a glass. "To Karen," she said with a wide smile, "who built her own castle and even added a moat." Laughter filled the room, easy and unforced. I smiled, but inside I felt something deeper, peace. Later that night, I stepped out onto the balcony alone, a glass of red wine in hand. The city stretched out before me, glittering and alive. Cool air touched my skin gently. My phone buzzed. A message from a former coworker. "Did you hear? Elise and Lukas declared bankruptcy. Sold everything. They're living with your parents now." I didn't feel joy. Not really. But I also didn't feel pity. What I felt was release, a soft, undeniable sense of closure. I had moved on. I had rebuilt myself from rubble, brick by brick, and now stood on solid ground. Behind me, the party carried on. I walked back inside, shut the balcony door behind me with a firm click. That sound, it wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't escape. It was freedom. Kind you fight for. Kind you own. 5 life lessons I learned after walking away from my family. Hi everyone, it's Karen. Today I want to share 5 powerful lessons I learned the hard way. Lessons that helped me reclaim my peace, rebuild my life, and finally become the woman I was always meant to be. If you've ever felt betrayed by those closest to you or struggled to find your worth, I hope this speaks to your heart. When forgiveness is for you, not for them. I used to think forgiving my parents meant excusing what they did, or worse, letting them back into my life. But real forgiveness is about setting yourself free. When I told my parents, "I forgive you, but not for your sake," I meant it. It was the only way I could release the weight I had carried for years. In your daily life, let go of resentment that poisons your peace. Write it down, speak it out, but don't let it live inside you. You deserve lightness. Blood doesn't define family, loyalty does. I grew up thinking family was sacred, that no matter what, they'd protect me. But when the people who should have defended me turned their backs, I found strength in chosen family. Clara, my true friends, the people who showed up for me without judgment, that is family. In your life, invest in relationships that feed your soul. Don't chase people just because they share your last name. Love is action, not biology. 3. You owe no one access to your life, especially those who broke it. When my parents came back to apologize, I didn't slam the door. But I didn't open it wide either. Just because someone regrets what they did doesn't mean they deserve a place in your future. Everyday tip: set boundaries that protect your peace. You can be kind without being available. Not everyone deserves a second chance. For pain can be the foundation for something beautiful. My past nearly destroyed me, but it also shaped me, pushed me to build a life from scratch on my terms. That night on my balcony, hearing that the people who hurt me had fallen, I didn't celebrate, but I finally felt peace, 'cause I had risen. In your life, don't hide your scars. Use them. Whether it's writing, art, your job, or how you treat others, you can turn pain into power. 5. Closure doesn't come from others. Comes from within. I used to wait for apologies, for validation, for justice. But when I stopped needing their words and trusted my own healing, that's when freedom came. Closure is a door you can shut yourself. Practice this. Stop waiting for the perfect conversation. Say what you need to a journal, a friend, or even into the air. Then move forward. If any part of this resonated with you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who might need these words, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let's grow through what we go through together.